Gonna leave me to die again if I get hurt.
Probably.
You watched their journey a dozen times, but you missed the most terrifying detail about Arya and the Hound. Her nightly prayer functioned as a literal binding spell, transforming Sandor into a weapon of the Faceless god. Discover how this secret pact turned a broken knight into the ultimate instrument of Arya's divine vengeance. Let's talk about something that has been right in front of everyone's face since Season 2 of Game of Thrones, and almost nobody has connected the dots on it. Arya Stark did not just survive Westeros. She did not just get lucky, she was chosen, and the moment it started is not when she walked through the doors of the House of Black and White in Braavos. It started much earlier, in the dark on the road, when she was a scared little girl reciting names before she went to sleep.
The Hound, Joffrey, Cersei, Ellen Payne.
She did it every single night like clockwork, and for a long time, everyone watching treated it like a coping mechanism, a way for a traumatized child to deal with grief and loss. But the more you understand about the religion of the many-faced god, and the more you understand about the faith of the Seven, the more you realize that what Arya was actually doing was praying. She just did not know it yet. Here is where you need to understand something about the world George R.R. Martin built. In Westeros and Essos, the faceless men of Braavos worship the many-faced god, the god of death. Their entire belief system is built on one idea, that every religion in the world is actually just worshipping the same god, under a different name. The drowned god of the Iron Islands, the Lord of Light, the Great Shepherd of Lazar, and critically, the Stranger from the Faith of the Seven. The Stranger is the seventh aspect of the Seven. He represents death and the unknown. Unlike the father or the mother, the Stranger is not prayed to. People fear him. Statues of the Stranger in temples are turned to face the wall so worshippers cannot see his face. He is depicted as neither male nor female, sometimes as a skeletal figure, sometimes as something barely human. In the books, even seeing the Stranger's likeness makes Samwell Tarly uncomfortable. The Faceless men explicitly believe the Stranger is one of their god's faces. There is a shrine to the Stranger inside the House of Black and White, right alongside all the other death gods. So when the Faceless men say, Valar Morghulis, all men must die, they are saying the same thing that the Faith of the Seven says when it acknowledges the Stranger. Death comes for everyone, without preference, without judgment. Now here is the part everyone misses. Sandor Clegane, the Hound, named his personal warhorse Stranger. That is confirmed in both the books and the show. The man who would become Arya's captor, her reluctant guardian, and eventually the closest thing she had to a protector on the road, literally named his horse after the god of death. That is not an accident in a story as carefully constructed as this one.
It got to the point where I would say his name every night before I went to bed. Willem. A prayer almost.
Let's go back to where the kill list started, because the origin of it tells you everything. In Season 2, Arya is travelling north with Yoren of the Night's Watch, disguised as a boy recruit named Ari. Yoren tells her a story about how he once became consumed by thoughts of revenge after a man named Willem killed his brother. He recited Willem's name over and over every night before he slept. He became obsessed, and when Willem finally returned to his village, Yoren killed him and had to flee, joining the Night's Watch and losing everything. Yoren was trying to warn her. He was telling her, this path destroys you. But Arya heard something completely different. She heard the method. She went away from that conversation and started doing exactly what Yoren described, chanting the names of her enemies every night before she slept, almost like a prayer, until she could get revenge on them. This is the moment. This is when it starts. Because without realizing it, she had just been taught the ritual structure of an invocation. She took a cautionary tale and turned it into a liturgy. In the books, the repetitive, rhythmic nature of this nightly recitation is even more pronounced. Martin writes it with an almost incantatory quality. The names flow out of her one after another, never changing in their order. It is not venting. It is not a list she adds to randomly. It has the structure of prayer. It has the weight of ritual. And once you understand that the Faceless men believe that sincere, repeated offerings to death, in any form, constitute worship of the many-faced god, Arya's list stops being a psychological habit and becomes something else entirely. She was feeding a god she had not met yet. Now let's talk about Sandor Clegane, because what happened to that man over seasons 2 through 4 is extraordinary if you read it through this lens. Sandor is introduced as a monster. He rides Stranger, his horse named after the god of death. He has served as Joffrey's personal weapon. He murdered a child named Micah, the butcher's son, on Joffrey's orders, rode him down on horseback and cut him nearly in half, and showed no remorse. When confronted about it, his only response was, he ran, not very fast. He's on Arya's kill list from almost the beginning. She says his name every night. She has decided that he will die, and then the Battle of the Blackwater happens. Sandor, who is pathologically terrified of fire because his own brother shoved his face into a burning brazier when they were children, over a wooden toy that Gregor had essentially discarded but refused to let Sandor touch, is surrounded by wildfire on the Blackwater. He breaks. He deserts. He walks into Sansa's room drunk and undone and then offers to take her north to Winterfell. She refuses. He leaves without her. And what that scene tells you is that everything keeping Sandor Clegane functional has just burned with the Blackwater. He leaves King's Landing and immediately, almost as if pulled by something, ends up in Arya's orbit. He finds her at the inn at the crossroads. He grabs her, and from that point on, no matter what either of them does, they cannot escape each other. This is where the dynamic shifts into something that neither character fully understands. Sandor is taking her north to her family, but family keeps dying. He tries the twins during the Red Wedding, and the Starks are massacred. He tries the Vale to sell her to Lysa Arryn, and Lysa is already dead. Every door closes. Every refuge disappears. The world around them collapses at a systematic pace, and yet the two of them keep surviving, keep walking, keep moving through a Westeros that seems designed to funnel them through a particular experience. In the books, there is a period where Sandor and Arya stay in a small village in the Riverlands. He works as a guard for the villagers, building a wooden fence around their homes, doing honest labour without complaint. Arya helps. They settle into something almost domestic. And it is during this period that you see clearly what was happening between them. He was not protecting her in any conventional sense. He was teaching her. Every brutal, cynical lesson he gave her about the reality of violence, the dishonesty of knights, the way the world actually works. He was stripping away her illusions one at a time. And in the faith of the Seven, the stranger does not just take life. The stranger strips away everything you were before death. He is the unknown. He is the transformation. He is the thing that turns you into something you were not before. Sandor was doing exactly that to Arya. He was the stranger walking beside her. There is a line from Arya's time in Braavos that most people remember as being about the Hound, but actually reveals everything. When Jaqen H'ghar, or the Waif, interrogates Arya about her past, Arya is put through the game of faces, where she must answer without lying. The Waif asks about the Hound. Arya says he is dead, then she corrects herself. Arya Stark left him to die. He was on her list, then he was not on her list. She took him off. The Waif says she sounds confused. Arya says she was. And then Arya starts screaming that she hated him, and Yasan hits her for lying. She screams it again. He hits her again. She says it a third time and he hits her again, because it is a lie. Now think about what that means in the context of the Faceless men's religion. The kill list is a prayer, a sincere nightly offering to the god of death. The names on that list are consecrated to death. And the Hound, despite being on that list, despite being named alongside murderers and tyrants, was removed, deliberately, by Arya herself. That act of removal is not mercy, or at least it is not just mercy, because in the structure that the story has built, removing someone from the list is the completion of a different kind of transaction. Sandor had served his function. He had walked beside her through the death of the Riverlands, through the collapse of every Lannister-adjacent structure they encountered, through raids and battles and the Red Wedding. He had taught her everything she needed to know to become what she was going to become. When she removed his name from the prayer, she released him, and then she walked away and left him bleeding on a hillside in the mountains. And here is the thing about the Hound's end. In both the books and the show, he does not die the way anyone expected. In the books, he is left for dead after a brutal fight with men working for the Mountain. His horse, Stranger, is taken from him. He loses the one physical symbol of his identity. But the evidence in the books, the limping gravedigger on the Quiet Isle, who is clearly too large to be anyone else, the details Martin drops through Brienne's point of view, strongly suggests Sandor is still alive, that he has found something like peace in a monastery dedicated to the faith, that the stranger's servant found the stranger's grace. In the show, he survives, joins the Brotherhood without banners, and eventually goes south to fight his brother, the Clegane Bowl, a confrontation between two brothers that had been building since the first episode. Gregor Clegane, reanimated, monstrous, barely human, against Sandor Clegane, who had spent years being stripped of everything that made him the monster he used to be. That fight ends when Sandor throws both himself and his brother through a wall and into the burning city below, choosing fire, the one thing he feared above everything, as the instrument of his end and his brother's end. He chose the stranger's embrace on his own terms. Now let's be precise about what all of this did to the Lannister regime, because that is the other half of this story. Every name Arya recited on her list was either a Lannister or a Lannister instrument. Joffrey, Cersei, Tywin, Meryn Trant, Elin Payne, the Mountain. And her time with the Hound, despite him being a former Lannister servant, was precisely what gave her the skills and the hardness to begin working through that list. Polliver, Lannister soldier, killed by Arya at the inn at the crossroads with the Hound standing right there.
What's your name? Rouge.
Thank you.
You're learning.
Rouge, another Lannister-adjacent criminal killed by Arya after she asks his name. The Hound teaches her that lesson directly. If you do not know the name, you cannot add it to the list. She learned, she asked, she killed. Then she goes to Braavos and trains with the Faceless Men, an organisation that the Faceless Men's own canon says exists to serve the many-faced god. The same god whose face is the stranger, the same god Arya had been praying to every night for years without knowing it. And what does she do when she comes back to Westeros? She wears the face of Walder Frey and kills every Frey male in the castle in one sitting. She poisons them all. She delivers death on a scale that the Hound's brutal practicality could never have achieved alone. Then Cersei. Cersei is killed not by Arya's blade, but by the collapse of the Red Keep around her. A collapse that Arya witnesses from the inside, that she barely escapes. The city burns. The last holdout of Lannister power turns to ash, and Arya walks out of it on a pale horse, covered in dust, looking like something from a painting of the apocalypse. A pale horse, walking out of death. In the Book of Revelation, the final horseman, the one representing death, rides a pale horse. In Westeros, Tyrion thinks to himself at one point that the stranger has mounted his pale mare and is riding toward them. And there is Arya, the girl who prayed to death every night for years, riding out of the city's wreckage on a white horse that appears out of nowhere, surrounded by corpses. The show gives you that image and then moves on from it, but it is worth sitting with. Because that is not a coincidence. That is the story telling you what Arya became. Let's talk about the moment that ties all of this together. Season 8, The Long Night. Arya is hiding inside Winterfell as the dead overrun it. She has been separated from everyone. She's running. And then she finds Melisandre, the Red Priestess who had once taken Gendry from her, who had once been on her list. Melisandre looks at her and says, "I see a darkness in you, and in that darkness, eyes staring back at me. Brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes, eyes you will shut forever." And then she asks her, "What do we say to the god of death?" And Arya says, without hesitation, calling back to the very first lesson Syrio Forel taught her when she was 9 years old in a courtyard in King's Landing, "Not today." That is the whole arc, compressed into 2 words. Arya spent years learning to serve death. She built a relationship with it. She carried its list. She delivered its names. And then, at the exact moment death came in its ultimate form, the Night King, the embodiment of the ultimate end, she turned around and killed it instead. The girl who prayed to the god of death every night for years stood up to death itself and said, "Not today." She was not running from death at that moment. She was its equal. None of this was an accident, and none of it started in Braavos. It started with Yoren's story about Willem and the names he chanted at night. It started with a little girl who misread a cautionary tale as a set of instructions. It started with a nightly ritual that had all the structure of an invocation because it was one. Sandor Clegane, the man named Stranger's Rider, the man who walked beside her through death after death after death, was the first instrument of that ritual. He did not survive impossible odds because he was lucky. He survived because he had a role to play. And when the role was complete, Arya walked away from him without mercy, because mercy was never the point. Completion was. The Hound became the Hound by having his face burned by his brother. Arya became what she became by walking with the burning man who rode death's horse through a burning kingdom, learning every dark lesson the road had to teach. That is what the story built. Quietly. Over 8 seasons, right in front of you. The list was always a prayer. the Hound was always the stranger's instrument, and Arya Stark was always going to be the one who closed the eyes the many-faced god had been waiting for. If you made it to the end of this, you already see Game of Thrones differently than you did when you clicked on this video. Drop a comment with the name you would put on your kill list. Not a real one, obviously, just the character from the show you would have wanted Arya to get to before the series ended. And if you want more deep dives like this one, the stuff hiding underneath the surface of the story that most people just scroll past, subscribe and hit the bell, because there is a lot more where this came from.